The Disability Discrimination Act 1992 and the Disability Standards for Education seek to eliminate, as far as possible, discrimination against people with disabilities. For the purposes of the DDA, disability is defined more broadly than the Queensland EAP verification categories. It also covers some disabilities which may not meet criteria for resourcing support. For example, learning disorders such as dyslexia, epilepsy, ADHD, and temporary disabilities as a result of an accident or illness. This video will focus on the standards for student support services. The standards state that a school must take reasonable steps to ensure that students with disabilities have access to the same student support services as students without disabilities. In addition, they must have access to specialised services needed for them to participate in the educational activities for which they are enrolled. So what do the Student Support Services standards mean in practice?
The standards state that a school must take reasonable steps to ensure that students with disabilities have access to the same student support services as students without disabilities. In addition, they must have access to specialised services needed for them to participate in the educational activities for which they are enrolled. So, what do the Student Support Services standards mean in practice? All services embedded in the life of the school, such as counselling, career guidance and pastoral support, must be available to students with disabilities as well as students without disabilities. Where the standards become more complex is in respect to specialised services which must be made available to support students with disabilities. Schools do not take a one-size-fits-all approach regarding what services will be provided with respect to particular disabilities. Each student's needs should be assessed on an individual basis. It is important, therefore, that the specialised services required by a student are established during the initial consultation at enrolment and monitored as part of the ongoing consultation process. The disability standards acknowledge that judgments about what amounts to a reasonable adjustment may change over time, and this should be made clear during the consultation process. If deterioration or improvement of the disability is noted, then there should be a reassessment of the support services required. Staff are obliged to be aware of and understand specialised services available to support students with particular disabilities. It is the school's responsibility to ensure that professional learning is provided in this area. What specialised services might reasonable adjustments involve? Services may include specialist expertise, such as speech pathologists and occupational therapists, support for personal and medical care. Staff may undergo training to manage a student's health plan requirements. Education support, such as interpreters, school officer support personnel, and technologies designed to improve accessibility of the curriculum. Let's look at these services in more detail. What is reasonable in terms of what and how much specialist expertise is to be provided? Relevant considerations will be the needs of the student and the resources available to the school. The standards say that schools must take reasonable steps to ensure a student has access to a specialised support service which is necessary for the student to participate in his or her schooling. For example, schools may facilitate provision of support services by an external agency. A recent case about the standards acknowledges, however, that schools work with finite resources and that a waiting list for therapy may be appropriate where that list is prioritised according to the children's needs and the availability of the appropriate therapist. Personal and medical care issues need to be identified and monitored as part of the ongoing consultation process. It is essential that a copy of any relevant medical management plan is provided to the school. Responsibility for the plan and its implementation must be allocated to a nominated staff member, usually a teacher. Options for education support should be discussed with the student and the student's associates during consultation meetings throughout the student's enrolment at the school. Problems may arise when parents request more support than the school offers. Some recent cases have looked at whether reasonable adjustment could require, for example, the provision of full-time, one-to-one aid support. These cases acknowledge that schools work with finite resources and that they are responsible for the education of many students. Financial considerations would be relevant to an argument by a school that to provide one-to-one support would be unreasonable or would cause unjustifiable hardship. This is discussed further in the reasonable adjustment and unjustifiable hardship video. What if a parent offers to fund extra aid support for his or her child? A couple of decided cases suggest that it may be lawful for a school to accept money offered by a parent to fund extra support. Whether an offer of money should be accepted or rejected, and how any money that might be accepted could be used, raises complex legal issues and should be discussed with Brisbane Catholic Education Legal Counsel and Employee Services. It is clear that a school cannot impose an extra fee for students with disabilities, nor can a school request a donation from a parent to fund extra support for his or her child. This would be discriminatory.
The appropriate support for each student within each Brisbane Catholic Education school or college is a priority. It's important that all staff understand that student support services must be accessible to all students, including those with disabilities. Support services may take many forms and are responsive to the particular needs of each student.